welcome to the Think Liberty podcast. I'm Vinny Marshall. This is, I think, episode 26. I'm pretty sure it's episode 26. Let's just say it's episode 26, even if it's not. Joining me this evening, we have Chris Oglesby.
Hi, I'm doing good. Good.
Lonie Dupree.
Hello, how are you?
I'm well. And a special guest this evening, Zachary Taylor. How's it going, Zach?
Hey.
Just to let everyone know, I say every time we roll these intros, I tell them, I'm going to say your name. And don't ask me how I'm doing, because I don't feel like saying I'm doing well 4 times in a row. And my good friends, as always, we go out of our way to make sure that no one is comfortable ever. Before we
Vinny,
get started.
Vinny.
Yes.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate that. You know what? I feel like yours came from a place of concern.
Totally.
That means a lot to me. And we're going to do it right from the gate this time. We're going to start right from the beginning. And I just wanted to let everyone know, don't forget, and we've mentioned it before, hottest ticket in town is the Unconvention. Okay, this is a Roads to Liberty Unconvention.
Roads to Freedom Foundation. Roads to Liberty is the podcast I do.
Roads to Liberty. I call it the Roads to Liberty. So as far as anyone that listens to this podcast is concerned, your podcast completely is in charge of this convention.
I mean, sometimes I wonder. But go ahead.
So let's get the official name. Roll us the official name right now and make sure I won't get it wrong again.
It is the Omaha Roads to Freedom Unconvention. It is put on by the Roads to Freedom Foundation. Blah, blah, blah.
Okay. All right. Okay. Fair enough. So Omaha Roads to Freedom Unconvention. And even though we've got the name wrong before, we got all the other stuff right. Mm-hmm. You can go ahead to their website at the omahaunconvention.com. You can use the code ThinkLiberty. This is going to get you 20% off. Now, they just cut their prices. So on top of that 20% off discount code, you get a little more savings due to the fact that they're kind of chopping things down. So you can basically get into the door for $40. And that's at omahaunconvention.com. So get in there. It's May 25th, Friday, May 25th to Sunday, May 22nd, the Embassy Suites and Conference Center in La Vista, Nebraska. Now, I've mentioned this name a few times. So we've got Dr. Ron Paul, we've got Larry Sharp, we've got Nick Sarwark, and Dr. Leaheeb Merritt. Did I pronounce that correctly? I feel like I always pronounce it wrong. That's good? Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. And there's a costume ball. There's a steampunk costume ball. Now, I have voiced on this podcast in the past. I'm not the biggest fan of steampunk.
So the costume ball is actually a speakeasy thing.
A speakeasy thing.
The steampunk is the band that's coming. Okay,
so listen. Our listeners have been vastly misinformed. So tell me more about this. We have a steampunk band. What? Fill me in. What's the name of this band? What do they do? What's going on with this?
It's Abney Park, and it's kind of like if you picture steampunk as a sound, they are steampunk. It's kind of a metal sound with a lot of unique blends to it. The costume ball is a speakeasy, so it's like a 1920s New Orleans kind of vibe. This was kind of a tip of the hat to the Libertarian National Convention that's going to be going on, about a month and a half later,
sure,
or a month later.
Is there a theme? Is there a theme for
you were
that?
talking about a theme for the national convention?
Right.
I don't know.
Okay, fair enough.
No comment. I have nothing to do with that.
Sure. I think what you're trying to say is that it's the unconvention. It's like the underground convention compared to the high profile la-di-da convention.
So here's what
are you saying that the unconvention is the prohibition version of the Libertarian Party National Convention?
So Ben Backus says it best. The unconvention is the fun convention.
I like it.
There's no business meetings. You're going to come and have the terrible choice, because we're going to have 3 tracks going at once, and they're all going to be awesome. We're focusing on cryptocurrency and blockchain on one, education, like free market education on the other. And then on the third one, it's going to be a lot of free market healthcare. And then we're going to have some things that don't necessarily fit into those. Like we'll have people talking about free speech and culture and marijuana legalization because, we kind of have to. But you're going to come and get to hear some of the best thought leaders in the movement and some people with some really cool ideas. I actually just got done doing a live stream with Dr. Kyle Varner talking about the Alfie Evans situation.
Oh my God.
So go on the Unconvention page and listen to that when you're done listening to this, because you will gain information that you probably didn't have.
Dude, I've been in the trenches with this Alfie Evans story. Anyone listening, you can go on think-liberty.com. I actually wrote an article about the Alfie Evans situation that includes a lot of information that I guess most people hadn't seen, but oh man, what a heart-wrenching situation that has been. So I'm definitely going to find my way over there and listen to that stream.
Yeah. And so his take on that is vastly different than most other libertarians because he's a doctor. So, like, to sum it up, his thing is this was a person who was not savable, but the state shouldn't have anything to do with it anyway. So it's a very nuanced approach, a very consistent approach, but there's a lot of things that people are saying about the situation that they clearly don't understand the medical side of things. Mm-hmm. They're looking only at when we talk about government being involved in things and how bad it is, that's how we're framing the story. But there's more to it than that.
Sure.
And he does a really good job of combining those two things.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I want to stick on this for a minute. So what in terms of the condition of the child's, what exactly I'd like to hear a little bit more about his position here. If you don't mind sharing.
He said the only brain activity that the child was having, and I can't give you the medical terms.
Sure.
But the brain activity was the child was having seizures, and that's it. No other brain activity was happening. So when people will say that, oh, they starved him to death, that's cruel, that's making him suffer, I specifically asked this question, and he said, no, he probably didn't suffer because to feel hunger is a higher brain function than he was currently capable of having.
Okay, so my immediate question then is due to that information. A lot of people say, so because here has been my argument, is people say, the high court made its decision because it was acting in the best interest of Alfie, in that transporting him from the Alderhay hospital to the hospital in Italy would cause suffering to the child based on his condition. My argument was, look, is he in a vegetative state, or will the trip cause him suffering? You have to pick one.
So I cannot speak for him because I didn't frame a question that way. What you would get from this interview, and that's about all I can speak, because he's way beyond me. I don't want to put words in his mouth. That it is a loss of dignity, for one, and two, the child was going to be used as a prop by the Catholic Church because they are fighting against abortion culturally, and they are saying every life is precious. Dude, 1 second, get out of here. I'm sorry, I have a dog who is not listening.
It's okay.
He would say, he was talking about the Catholic Church is trying to use this child as a political pawn, and that's it. All he was going to do is go sit in a vegetative state in a hospital in Italy, probably on taxpayer dime in Italy, and that's it. He's not going to recover.
So this is
obviously now he's dead. God rest him. But
this is
there was no hope.
This is interesting to me. I don't think anyone thought there was hope, and if they did, they were probably misinformed on the facts of the situation. I know I certainly didn't.
So I saw a lot of people who who thought that there was hope.
I have to, and I think that's incorrect. I think that if you read up enough on it, then most of the professionals that had weighed in on it, if you did your due diligence, you'd find that they all pretty much agreed that he was terminal. And there wasn't a lot of brain activity going on. But what I did find, so I did use the starvation bit as an argument, but I only used it as an argument to contrast with the arguments put forward by the High Court. Now, I know that Italy also has a system that is going to largely rely on the taxpayers, and that's, it's not up to us to decide what other countries do with their services and with their care, with their governments, obviously. But my argument was, they sit there and they say that moving him to Italy would have been inhumane, and then they turn around and starve him for 28 hours. And in my opinion, just kind of based off of what you're saying, I personally think that the posturing by the High Court of the UK is no better than the posturing than you're espousing coming from Italy. And it just sounds like this is almost like a battle of pride between governments, in a sense.
Yes.
So what we kind of concluded by the end of the talk is, like, if you take the family out, because you never want to point blame at a grieving family. They are caught in the middle of this. Right. Let's move them out of it. Right. There are no good people here. The government in Britain should not have the power to do what they did. The Pope and the Vatican are playing some BS games and using a child as a pawn, and that's gross too. Italy shouldn't be wasting their resources on a brain dead child. And not brain dead, but I asked, "Is the lights are on and no one's home? Is that an accurate phrase?" And he said that's entirely accurate for this situation.
Okay, so my question was, just being what I am compared to the doctor, ignorant of medical science, so to speak. From what I understand, there was not a diagnosis made, but there was there was definitely symptoms that he was exhibiting, and things that they could notice. How could the High Court make a decision like this, or deem him brain dead, or if there was no diagnosis of his ailment, or even treat him? How could Italy make a claim? This is kind of backs up what Vinny was saying, or what like posturing by governments, or what you were saying, the posturing by governments thing. So how does a diagnosis really play into this whole situation, or lack of a diagnosis? Did he mention that at all?
So he talked about having read what was in the legal papers for a diagnosis, and it went completely over my head. I will not even try to explain it.
Okay. I have to assume, I'm no medical professional, right? But I have to assume that they're talking about this is a degenerative disease in terms of brain function, right?
So it wasn't degenerative from the way. So I'm going to try to layman's terms what he told me this was.
That's interesting.
It was not degenerative. It was his muscles never formed. They never took on any firmness or strength. Because of that, his lungs collapsed and it caused a cardiac arrest. And they revived him, but his brain was without oxygen for too long. And when that happens, your brain dies, essentially.
Right.
So you can still get some function out of your brain, but it's not like being a person of faith. I would say his soul left, and we are left with a vessel that is still functioning in a certain capacity, but the person is gone.
I would challenge that assertion, but the thing is, I think that's going in too much of the minutia, and I don't want to cover it in this podcast. So, and this is not a religious podcast. So, anyway, yeah.
The only thing I think of when I hear that is just those poor parents. Man, I have 3 kids.
They're just reaching out for hope. You can't blame them for any of this.
So one of the best arguments I think I've heard, and it caught me by surprise, and I'm sitting there making I guess probably the standard arguments that you see libertarians make, I suppose. And someone jumped in on this debate, and they made an argument that really kind of put me beside myself. And what they said is that for all the flaws of the American system, and the whole time I've been debating this, I've been saying, like, I'm not claiming the American system is any better. So that was my whole position the whole time, was like, we've got two broken systems here, and it just because I'm criticizing one doesn't mean I'm vaulting another up. And then someone else jumped in and they pointed out something that I had completely missed that I really appreciated the insight of. And that is, in an American system, so the only reason that Alfie, technically the only reason that this situation exists, and this is kind of a weird argument, is the fact that the social medicine program allowed Alfie to live as long as he had.
Absolutely.
If you're in America, this is a situation where it's up to the parents right away, right? At the moment that this diagnosis comes in, it's now up to the parents, right? Imagine it. You're in a hospital, right? You're sitting there in an American hospital and the doctor tells you this is what's going on and this is what you're facing. And you, as the parents at that moment, have to have a very real conversation about your coverage, how much you can afford, what's going on with your child, and what's a realistic way to move forward. Alfie Evans would not have made it as long in an American system.
And that was an argument that Kyle was making as well.
Right. Right. And I think that's a very valid argument, because for all the flaws of the American system, at least it would have put the decision in the parents' hands at the time when it was a pertinent decision to have been made. And so that was very interesting to me. Chris, anything on this?
Yeah, I actually had to, I got into it with a couple of different people, and it was kind of a similar situation to what experience to what you had, where they thought instantaneously that I was arguing pro of our American system as it exists now compared to whatever is in England. But I saw a lot of the issue coming forth of like, well, people get denied service here because their insurance doesn't cover it, or something like that, trying to get into the minutia of what's wrong with the American system and using that as an arguing point against me saying, well, no, this situation is wrong and it occurred because there is a socialized medical system in England, and the high court was able to intervene that quickly because of that. And I just thought it was odd that, and I don't think it was odd. It just shows how people kind of are ingrained into this. Well, if it's not one thing, it's the other thing. If you're not saying this, well, then you definitely are saying that, and it was kind of a point where I got to a point where I'm just like, listen, we're talking about a human life here. And I don't know if I can talk, like, have people get into their emotions with me about this subject, online. And, I don't know. I kind of took the Alfie situation pretty hard and had to kind of think and pray on it for a little bit. It's definitely something that I feel like, everybody's precious in God's sight, but everybody's not precious in the sight of a cruel government. And I definitely think that the British government, as of late, has become one of those cruel and oppressive governments.
I have no arguments whatsoever on that. Lonie, we haven't heard from you, buddy. Before we move on, do you have anything you'd like to share on the Alfie Evans situation?
I probably would have pulled a John Q, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, I know.
No, me too.
I know on principle that's wrong, but I just know myself well enough to where I'm probably going to pull a John Q in that kind of instance. At least in America, the family has the choice of pulling a loved one off of life support. It's not a choice that's made by anyone else.
No, I mean, look, you're right. That's the hard part here, and it's like what Zach and I were just talking about. Is with all the flaws of American medicine, at least in the situation of American medicine, the choice is left to the parents when the diagnosis is made on how to move forward based off of their financial situation and just kind of where they're at. Right. Yeah. And in Europe, it's a different situation because the child is sick. You bring the child to the hospital and now you're in that socialized healthcare game. In America, the diagnosis is made. The parents now have to sit and figure out how to move forward. This is definitely a situation where both outcomes are ugly. Obviously, the socialized healthcare situation is ugly because look what happened. Obviously, the American healthcare situation is ugly because you have to have a conversation about what to do with your terminal child. You know, it's ugly on both sides, but I feel like,
I mean, I have a 2-year-old daughter, and I can't possibly imagine having to make a choice like that.
Absolutely brutal,
you know, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. And I feel, you know, just so much for the parents there. You know, it's just a messed up situation, and. Like overall, like no matter where it would have happened, I don't know. I think just ultimately the choice should lie with the family and not with some people on a board.
I agree. And so here's the thing. And what I saw a lot of people saying, and we'll move on from Alfie after this, but what I saw a lot of people were saying with Alfie was that they were saying that they viewed basically the status of what was going on as torture. And if you view the status of what's going on as torture, then the judgments and rulings made by the high court were then just. If you view Alfie being transferred to Italy as torture, then the ruling of the high court does not seem unjust if that's the headspace that you're in. Right. And that's the argument that I've kind of seen being made. And it's very interesting. And I can't help but think when you consider everything that happened with this situation, and as harsh as it is to say, so you've got the situation where this child was kept alive for a longer amount of time than he would have been with a capitalist system, because you have this socialized system that's able to subsidize medical care and keep this child alive longer than it would have been alternatively. And that's, I mean, it's kind of a utilitarian argument when you break it down to it, you know. And when you take all that into consideration, and then you take into consideration the bolstered police force that they had to have monitoring the hospital, and you take into consideration all the patients and the families visiting the other patients that were unrelated to this case, that were being harassed and that had problems because of everything that you know, all the issues that were caused by this situation. You consider all the staff that were harassed by the protesters, people trying to essentially, you know, raid the hospital. You've seen the pictures online, I'm sure, all those dudes in their neon green shirts and everything, the officers in Europe. And you take into consideration the police, the Metropolitan Police now are going online, and they were going on Twitter and telling people that they are reading their social media quotes. At what point can't someone stand back and say, maybe like, this is why I say it's like an argument of governments, right? Because it's clear that the UK High Court was white knuckling this. You have so much that you're sacrificing just for the sake of, like, you can't leave this hospital. These parents can't leave this hospital. It was posturing on both sides. It was posturing by Italy. It was posturing by the UK. I'm glad you brought that up today, Zach. That's actually a great insight from the stream that you had before. I'm glad you shared that with us.
So yeah, check out the Omaha Unconvention Facebook page. He explains it a lot better than I do.
Yeah, so let's move on from that. I want to talk a little bit about your podcast. Why don't you tell everyone what your podcast is called, and why don't you tell us about, and I was just on it recently. I enjoyed myself very much. So tell us about
some of our best episodes, actually. It was nice.
Heck yes, that was a lot of fun. Tell us, you know, the name, when to expect it, where people can go to find it, and what they can expect to hear.
So we are we're on a lot of platforms. We're on Minds, we're on SoundCloud, we're on YouTube, we're on Facebook and Twitter. above all of that, we have our website, which is roads2liberty.com. And so Roads to Liberty is the name of the podcast group. And it used to be the name of the podcast that was running by itself. And now I think they're about to change their name to something kind of funny. But there's the Guardians of Liberty, which is Nathan and I, and we do a lot of national and international commentary and things like that. And then the other podcast team does specifically Nebraska-centric stuff, which you can still get a lot of really cool information from that, even if you're not from Nebraska, because they really dig into like how the sausage is made, essentially. Ben Backus is on a city council, so he is an elected libertarian, and he has a lot of insight as to the dirtiness of politics. So that podcast is really useful if you just want to understand those kinds of things. And then, they keep track of the legislature here in Nebraska, which is always fun to kind of hear them going back and forth about that. And then, like I said, the Guardians of Liberty cover this national and international stuff. Tonight, it'll go up in a couple days. We don't have a set schedule because I'm super busy doing social media for everyone at this point. And now I'm like editing videos for campaigns and things like that. So we try to get an episode up every week. It's not always the same day, which is a little frustrating, but that's just how my schedule works out.
I know it's tough. The consistency is tough. We've been doing better lately here with the Think Liberty podcast. Yeah. I got bad. It's tough though, man. You know, when you're doing it and you're not getting paid for it, it's hard to stay disciplined and keep those coming out every day. We try to make sure we get ours out every Tuesday. Which day do you guys kind of try to shoot for yourselves?
So typically we were recording on Thursday or Friday, but those days just don't work for me anymore. And then I'm working a second job on Saturdays now. So like we recorded, I recorded a podcast, I did a live stream, and now I'm here today. This is my Sunday. This is my one day off.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your service. So you guys do yours, you do yours live, right? We did ours live.
If we have a guest that we think we're going to get some good interaction, we'll do stuff live. But yeah, it depends. Like the last one that I uploaded was I personally did an interview with Patty Maloney from Michigan. Mm-hmm. And I think that went up a couple days ago. And you know, we're kind of doing this thing now where if we're not able to get together, he'll cut an episode or I'll cut an episode, and we'll get content out, and it's always good content, I feel. So
I agree.
We're kind of building more of a media team at this point than a consistent podcast that's doing the same thing every week. Mm-hmm. And that can be a little frustrating sometimes, but it also has a lot of creative freedom, which I think is good in the long run.
Yeah, I agree. It's a lot of the reason that we decided to go with the network deal than instead of just having every episode as the Think Liberty episode, obviously. But yeah, so you know, anyone listening, please stop by, check that out. It's a good podcast. These you can't get enough Liberty podcasts because after some point, Ben Shapiro's great, but not all of us support war, so you need something else,
I discovered something that the Mises Institute has audiobooks on a podcast. Search Mises Institute audiobooks in whatever program or app you use for podcasts, and there's like For a New Liberty, the law, all kinds of stuff, and it's all in like separate sections, and they're like, some of them their files are like 11 hours long.
Yeah, but that'll happen.
Yeah, but it's a complete audiobook. So I thought that was pretty cool. I just thought I'd share that real quick.
No,
So is
that's
that just like
fantastic.
white nationalist propaganda or what?
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah.
speaking of books and giving away books free, if you go on to Anarcho Christian's Facebook page, they're actually doing a promotion right now. If you like and share their post, you can actually get a libertarian book for free. And so they're doing a drawing right now. And Lonie, you reminded me of that. So it's actually kind of a cool thing that they're doing to increase traffic to their page, for one, because that's something that's I'm interested in. But yeah, if you want to try to earn a free book, go to Anarcho Christian's Facebook. So
Yeah, get on top of it. Get some free books. So I figure we can jump into some news. We have a breaking story going on. I don't know if any of you guys have heard about it, but this migrant caravan that everyone has been talking about finally made its way up to the border, and we've got a tipping point on our hands. So you've got Trump, who's been posturing with all of his rhetoric from Twitter about how he wasn't going to let anybody in from this migrant caravan, and now they're at the border, and there's you're starting to see all the news stories pop up about it. This is an interesting situation because you've got the people in this migrant caravan that it seems that they have innocent enough intent. You hear pretty much the arguments coming from them as saying that they're just looking for a better life, and I suppose that's hard to argue against. But you've got all the arguments that the people that support border control have. What do you guys think of the situation? Lonie, you haven't been talking as much, so I want to start with you. Are you familiar with this migrant situation?
I saw something about it. Well, I mean, I guess I'm going to say that if their plan is to come to America and search for a better life, then, well, we kind of have a process for that. I would say apply for citizenship like, everyone else is supposed to do. So otherwise, you're just kind of, just boldly just walking across and, just admitting to illegally immigrating. I don't know, but I have kind of a different view on that. And it's mostly because my family is Mexican, and like you should see just the way that my grandpa and my grandfather, he was he served in World War II. My uncles were all in Vietnam. Several of them went on. One worked for Border Patrol. Just all this kind of stuff. All of the service to the country, and they get treated the same as these people who just swam across the Rio Grande because they happen to speak Spanish in public. I don't know. I just have maybe a more personal kind of view towards it. I mean, there's a system. That's what my ancestors did. They used the proper system. I don't know. I know that's going to be controversial on a libertarian podcast, but that's my view. So,
no, that's a fair take. So the thing that's hard for me about this is you have, a lot of different things involved right here. You've got, and I agree that. Okay, so the hard part for me is that everyone's so quick to paint Trump as a racist, but if you read what Trump has said about this, I don't think that the things he's saying are so egregious. Basically, what Trump is saying is I don't have a problem with anyone coming to America, but they need to come through the front door. This I somewhat agree with based on the reality of our situation now. Obviously,
absolutely.
Right. Obviously, I think that if we're in a situation where we live in Ancapistan, private borders is the answer to all of this. Your ability to restrict migration ends at your property line, and that's just kind of how it should go. Unfortunately, we're in a different kind of situation when we're occupying half the world, and you can't just I like to put it this way because for me it's easy to frame it this way. You can't just go and wage war on the land and then leave your drawbridge down, right? And so we do have the situation where it benefits America at the current time to vet the people that come into the country. But on the other hand, the system in which that vetting is done is horribly bureaucratic, flawed, choked up, and just ridiculous. So you've got this very difficult situation where how does someone come into the country if they have all the legitimate reasons to come in and they should be accepted under, you know, any of the regulations that we put in front of people, but the process takes so long. What is someone, you know, what is someone to do then? Chris, what's your opinion here?
Well, my opinion is that a lot of talk has been about immigration reform, especially from like the Democrats and things like that, like within recent years. And immigration needs to be reformed, but it needs to be reformed in a way that a lot of people aren't thinking of. A lot of the people that I've worked with, you know, I can think back to like when I actually held a job at Walmart, and there was this, you know, there was a couple of immigrants that I worked with, or people that were out there on visas and had been on visas for years, but they were trying to get citizenship. Whereas people that came across the, you know, who walked across the border, you know, illegally and got and went about it that way, then it was just like, well, there's amnesty granted for them. Like that's the system of immigration is unfair to everybody concerned. It's unfair to the quote unquote illegal immigrants that come over. It's fair to the legal immigrants that try to walk in through the front door and obey the law and do things as they're supposed to be done. It's unfair to the people who are caught in the bureaucracy, and it's unfair to the citizens of the United States. There needs to be a more streamlined system in which it compels people to actually go through the front door to begin with. And then if that was the case, then there would not be this, you know, massive amounts of illegal immigrants in the United States. That upon other things. Also, you know, the welfare system ties into this as well, and that's an argument that is made by a lot of libertarian economists, but I don't really want to get into that. When we're talking about when we're talking about the the wave that's at the border right now, look at some of these videos. They definitely have some people who are doing designated videographing. The videos that are coming from the other side of across the border. And I don't know. Like, I don't want to put on my tinfoil hat here, but let's just say that there's a lot of the coyotes that are connected to the cartel, and there's a lot of organized crime and human trafficking that is tied to a lot of these stunts. And I don't want to say that they paid people to go out to the border and try to do this, but it's a possibility to consider. That all of that would not have happened if our immigration system was set up in a way that was conducive to for people to actually want to come here legally, instead of use what's the word I'm looking for? Take advantage of the system to come across the border illegally and then survive off of the benevolence of the system and just kind of wait it out. That's unfair to the people that have actually taken the time to come here legally, who are hard workers, who pay taxes even. It's a very it's a very multifaceted situation, but on its core, it's very, very simple. You want immigrants to come to the United States. You want immigrants to come to the United States, period. That plain and simple, because they generally do the work that the people who are born here don't want to do. They also contribute to the economy because they bring new ideas and they start new businesses, and they also join the military, and they also, go into public service and do all that other kind of stuff that normal U.S. citizens do. But a lot of them end up starting their own businesses. There was a nice Iraqi immigrant family that I met years ago that actually started a chain of falafel houses, and they had really good falafels, and I went there all the time. And so that's just one example. Everybody probably knows of an example of this happening. They go to an immigrant business a Mexican restaurant or something like that. And the capitalist system is the way that can encourage positive immigration. And that's something that's not taken advantage of enough. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox now.
No, that's good. That's good.
I would like to clarify that, yes, I do want a more streamlined immigration system. Like when I mentioned my grandparents arriving, it was a much more streamlined system. It should not take 15 years to become a citizen. That is absolutely ridiculous. This should be a 2 to 3 year process at most. That is the longest amount of time I can possibly think that it should take. A year is probably too long. Also, I mean, so yeah, I just wanted to clarify that I'm not this border hawk or whatever people, So
no, I agree, and it's hard because people, man, it's a tough libertarian topic because people get so divisive over it. But I'm essentially on the same page as you are, Lonie. In a perfect world, that yes, I agree with all of the libertarian statements that are made, but that's just not the world we live in right now. We just don't
have one. We don't have a perfect world right now. You got the drug war that we're waging is empowering drug cartels, and to just have just an opened up border, it just be ridiculous. And also like how you mentioned, whenever you're occupying half the world and you have a lot of enemies, it's not a smart idea.
You don't want to just let them walk right in.
Right.
Look, this is, I did an exercise when I was in elementary school. And it was you make your own kingdom. And essentially the whole goal of this exercise was to state what we were going over all, maybe it was junior high, but either way, it was so long ago. Who can remember? But you go and we were learning about all this stuff that like these castles did in the medieval times for security. And the exercise was, the teacher wanted you to list all of the security measures that you were taking as a castle to keep invaders out. And it was actually kind of eye-opening to me because you look at it and so many people I'll ask you guys this. Guess what was the one thing that most people lost on, because it was pretty much like a paper strategic exercise, right? So what happened is the teacher would give you, the opposing kingdom, a piece of paper that listed out all of the security measures that the opposing castle had, and you were then to figure out how to get able to storm that opposing castle with all of their security measures, right? And I want you guys to guess which security measure above all else was the one that was exploited more often than not in this exercise.
Disease.
The drawbridge.
Okay.
The door, the front door. That's how I lost. That's how my team lost. Right. And so everyone has all these, like, we're going to have these cauldrons of iron that fall on people that try to come in. We're going to have all this. You know why I lost? I lost because I left my drawbridge down. I lost because on my piece of paper, I didn't say that we left the drawbridge up. So everyone that was against me in this exercise said, we walk right in to the front door and we drop poison in your water supply. And they won.
Disease.
But
it's disease. Right. So that ended up being the thing that killed my theoretical kingdom. But the reason it was made possible is because I left the front door open.
Well, I mean, to be honest, depending on what age of like the medieval history this occurred in, they could have just thrown a diseased like goat over your wall,
right?
And then with a trebuchet, and then they set their whole army outside and then just wait till you die. So, this is
true.
But the thing is, I don't expect middle schoolers to, think of that.
I think,
right.
I think Genghis Khan did that. It's either Genghis. Yeah, I think Genghis Khan did that. It was diseased. It was dead, diseased bodies. Like they would just launch them over and just wait it out.
That sounds like a Genghis thing to do.
It's biological warfare.
Yeah, but either way, it at a young age, it gave me a lot of insight as to just the dangers of such things. And if you're a kingdom that's going out of your way to start wars and occupy other kingdoms, leaving your front door open, it might not be in your best interest. Zach, we haven't heard from you, buddy. How about you? Your opinion, this whole, crazy migration caravan that's now at the U.S.-Mexico border.
So, for a little background, I am the only white kid that my biological mother had. The rest are half Mexican, and Mexican specifically, because if you say Hispanic, they get real pissed off.
Fair enough.
I think illegal immigration is awesome because you are taking workers who are not subject to the minimum wage and putting them in jobs that the minimum wage is too high for that job. And those people are still going to live better than they were back home because they know how to stretch money, whereas us Americans really don't. Most.
Right. We just go further into debt.
Right. So sorry, I lost my train of thought. I'm starting to get tired. I'm sorry. You have a lot of jobs that we need people who are not subject to our crazy labor laws to do. And without having those people, the cost of our food goes astronomically high. The cost of a lot of the cheap products we get goes up. For example, when I was moving out of a roach-infested drug house into a different state and a better situation, the job I took was at a cereal plant where if a third of the people there had papers, I will be very surprised. And they were able to keep their wages low and put out product cheaply, so that cereal companies weren't charging $8 for their cereals. And we worked on Cheerios, some of those chocolatey cereals and things like that. Like, we made those in this factory. Without having cheap labor to do that stuff gets expensive in a hurry. So I think it was Rothbard, and this is weird for me to be quoting any philosopher because I really don't pay attention to libertarian philosophy that much. Rothbard talked about this point, and I think he was absolutely correct. Illegal immigrants are necessary for our economy as long as we have labor laws.
I do believe it was Milton Friedman that actually said that exact point. You're probably right because I don't pay attention to those things. But Rothbard probably did too. But I specifically remember Milton Friedman actually phrasing it pretty much exactly like that.
Yeah, what Milton Friedman said was it's only good if it's illegal.
Yes. Yep.
Because
that sounds like what I'm thinking of.
I'm sure a bunch of people have touched on it, but I do remember that's what Milton Friedman said. It's only good if it's illegal because then if you, I guess, legal, if you make it legal or whatever. I'm messing it up, but basically, then you subject him to all of the taxes and all of the other stuff, and then no one will come over. But if they can come over and make cash money, then it's enticing, and people can get away with cheap labor and stuff.
And to be fair, they do pay taxes.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Thank you for bringing
just
that
not
up.
income taxes usually.
Sometimes even so, where I worked, a lot of the people were there on stolen Social Security numbers, if I'm being honest. So they were paying taxes. Taxes were being taken out of their checks that they could not then claim income tax refunds, even though they would have made bank if they could, because that's not them. That they're using a child from New Jersey's Social Security number. So It happened a lot. It's like the worst kept secret in factory work.
So I'd kind of like to chime in here about like, we're kind of getting into like what entices people to come here. And I think that's a huge point in which is kind of left out of a lot of the mainstream debate on immigration. What entices people to come here? And I think a lot of social structure, or a lot of the like social handouts, as you will, entice a lot of people to come here, but I don't think that that's a majority of people, even if a majority of immigrants. That being said, it is a drain on the system. And of course, I think if we're going to talk about like what immigration reforms need to be made, we need to look at what social welfare systems are in place that are attracting these people here. Instead, we want to attract people who are going to contribute to the system of commerce and capitalism, like what you're describing, Zach. That there's people that come here and they have a better situation than where they were before, because they are making more and they're in a better life situation, period. And so therefore they like the situation where they're at. So what if they work for $5 an hour? It's better than they were, and they'll move up in the company if they could. But the system as it exists now prevents that from happening. These people can't move up from their crappy job that they're working, because they're, of course, sometimes using bad social security numbers or something like that. So it's something to consider, I think.
Also, I would like to point out a reason that they're able to do this, and this is a very from what I have seen in kind of going around the world a little bit, Americans are really sold on the idea of you have your house and your family, or your apartment and your family, and that's just how it is. In the rest of the world, you don't see that as much. You will see multiple families in a living situation together. Typically, it's extended family. So, and you see this a lot. And I can't, I'm not Mexican. I can't speak for Mexicans, but having lived in that culture a little bit, what I see a lot of is 3 or 4 generations living in a large house. And because they're all working different shifts, and you'll have a couple of the women of the family making food for the whole family, and all the men are going out working, and some of the women are going out working, the kids are going to school. The next generation will be successful because they've gone to school and they've gotten all this knowledge. But in that moment, they understand they can't all live in a different house. That it is very against the American mindset for what success looks like. But that is success for them. Their family is living together, and to a lot of cultures, that's how it should be. This one family per house thing is a very American idea.
It is. And, what I find is interesting is a lot of people push on this welfare thing. So I actually did some research on this, and it turns out that I don't want to say a fixed percentage, but it's low. I don't want to say anywhere between 1% to 5%. 5 is probably too high. Of welfare is spent on illegal immigrants. So, actually most welfare programs that exist in the United States actually have to be, you have to have a social security number and identification to be able to qualify for them. Now that's not to say all, but most. Right. So the welfare argument, I don't feel is as significant as it's made out to be. Most of these individuals, as you guys have already covered, find ways to get past that, and they actually end up being tax-paying citizens in one way or another, illegal or not, but they are paying taxes. So the argument for the drain on welfare isn't as significant, I think, as people make it out to be. And that's interesting to me, because it's people want that argument to exist. And I agree. If there was a system in the United States of America where people were able to come in illegally, quote unquote, and they're able to come in and raise the cost for everybody else, that would be an issue if it was happening en masse. But it just doesn't seem to be the case. So with those specific people making those specific arguments, it seems very telling to me the place that they're coming from when they're saying that the reason I don't like this is because of welfare. But if you look at the actual facts and statistics, it is not a giant burden on welfare that is caused by these individuals.
Right. If you've ever, fallen on enough of hard times to where, you have to have the humbling experience of applying for welfare or food stamps or something like that, you know how incredibly just mind-numbing, just eyeball ripping out difficult and stressful it is to get anything done. And that's whenever you have all of your stuff is straight, you have all of your check stubs that you need or whatever it is, and your address and everything is all correct, and all of your stuff is in proper order. And it is still one of the hardest things that you will ever do is actually get the government to help you in some sort of way. So some people who don't speak English with some social security card that's fake from someone that's been dead for 20 years, I don't see it happening.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing, and it's going to be very interesting to see what comes of it. I'm very interested. I mean, it's a standoff. It's literally a Mexican standoff.
That's racist, Vinny. That's racist.
What I think is funny.
No, it's not. It's not racist at all. No, it's not.
What I thought was funny was whatever Zach was mentioning, like oh yeah, like the how people, the different generations live with each other, and I'm just like, but I keep forgetting like the way that like my mom's family is, like they're American, like that's like they're not like, they did not hang on to like speaking Spanish was like the only thing, and low key making fun of white people, like that's the only thing that they do. Like other than that, they are just straight just American, So that's why I was just like, huh. And then I was like, okay,
I think being American means making fun of white people. Like, there's a lot to make fun of.
Wait, what?
Well, I mean, most Americans do at this point, if you consider the demographics of like, Democrats. I mean, look, you got Kanye West who wore a Make America Great Again hat, and there's people on Facebook basically telling him he's not actually black.
Right. Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is
white people are doing this,
humorous.
Which is amazing.
Right. It's interesting. This look, the immigration debate is interesting. And it's worth debate for sure. I just wish it were a debate that people were analyzing facts more before they had, because I think that it's a debate, as I said, worth having. But when you look at the facts, it actually turns out that immigration leads to a lot of prosperity in many cases. So people arguing against it, I feel like, aren't arguing from the right place. They're arguing from places that kind of paint them as obviously having a motive of argument. And that's unfortunate, because I feel like it's an interesting and important topic to, kind of to discuss, but people just, I feel, aren't discussing it correctly. Anyhow, for what that's worth, man, we got to an hour quick here this evening. There's a couple other things going on. We'll go a little longer tonight. We have a special guest, so that's okay. I want to know your guys' opinion real quick. We're going to break down here. We got North Korea and South Korea. Wow. I woke up and to pictures of these dudes planting trees and holding hands together. I'll start with you, Zach. Man, what was your reaction when you saw this coming out of the news cycle this weekend?
So pleasantly surprised, but not overly so. What we know about North Korea is that they have slowly, like the internet is slowly breaking down their hegemony on thought. And if they do not start doing something soon to modernize, their people are going to revolt. And so he needs to start playing a little nicer to keep the populace under control for a little bit longer. Ultimately, information is getting into North Korea, and people are starting to see that all the things that they've been told just aren't true. And I foresee if they do not become an actual democracy soon, they will have a rebellion. And the moment that there's an actual popular uprising, you will see South Korea crossing the border quickly. Because they have to. They can't risk the North Korean government getting scared and taking all of that ordnance and just shelling Seoul into dust. So that's basically it.
No, I think that's a fair take. How about you, Chris? What were your thoughts when you saw that headline come across?
So, well, to answer your question, my thoughts when I saw the headline going across and the video of Kim Jong-un and them shaking hands and crossing their borders to be in their respective countries, I thought it was I thought it was very kind gesture, and I listened to a lot of what Kim Jong-un's words were when he gave his speech, and they all were very kind and gracious, and I think peaceful. But I think what Zach said, it rings very true, is that I think a lot of people in North Korea, and this is just speculation on my part, but it's rooted in some truth, that a lot of people in North Korea are waking up to realizing that no, things are different in other places, and that this guy's pretty much oppressing us, and there would be revolts or something like that to that effect happening. And I think Kim Jong-un realizes that. Now, from what I understand, in North Korea, there's been a power play for a really long time between like the old generals and Kim Jong-un himself to be, you need to come from a position of strength internationally. You need to let people know you mean business. And I think that a lot of that this is also a power play, in that he's letting people know that he means business, but in a different way. That he would like to get onto the international diplomacy realm instead of the legacy of what his father was, which was the international military might. I think they realize that they cannot win in that realm between South Korea and Japan, and I don't know, there might be some workings going on between China and them that we don't know about. But that's kind of my thoughts about it. I feel like this is kind of smoke and mirrors. It might be genuine in some way, shape, or form. I kind of like the idea of the Korean War being quote unquote ended. So that's something interesting. But Lonie, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, the first thing I thought was like, wow, Dennis Rodman actually pulled it off. like he did it. He saved us.
Rodman went out there and he talked to KJU, worked it all out through. I love it. That's a narrative I would be happy to accept.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that's what gets written down in the history books, that Dennis Rodman ended the Korean War. Yeah, I mean, I agree with what everyone else has been saying. I kind of like, I don't want to give Trump credit, but I kind of do, because there was a lot of like back and forth between America and Korea recently, and I think maybe he kind of realized like, okay, this dude is legit crazy, and like if I do anything wrong, that they are going to send the American military to North Korea, and which is that is a Donald Trump thing that he would totally do, which is stupid, but it would happen. And I think it just realizes that it would just be a loss, and it's just time. It's time to just hang it up and go hold hands with President Moon.
That being said, like there was a Time magazine front page about Moon a couple years ago, and they called him the negotiator. And so there was very much hailed in his diplomacy skills, but quite recently, he actually hailed Donald Trump for bringing about the inter-Korean trials, and he actually thanked him for it. So I don't know. I think there is some credit to be given to Donald Trump for it, but I do not want to take any of that away from President Moon.
Right.
Yeah, I think that he is a great debater and negotiator, and I kind of want this to be their thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think Donald Trump is going to take all kind of credit for it, but we just need, I guess, push the no, it was Moon and Dennis Rodman, mostly Dennis Rodman, but
I think there's something to be said for when you saber rattle and you have the largest military in the world, it is going to get results, and the way we do it is wrong. And we cause a ton of problems when we do it, but sometimes it's the coin is eventually going to land face up once in a while. And I think that our foreign policy helped in this situation, and it was a fluke, and we shouldn't count on that happening again.
Yeah. Well, Ben Shapiro would beg to differ.
Ben Shapiro doesn't know anything about military strategy or the military.
No, listen here, gang. So. Listen here, gang. I know a lot about military strategy.
Well,
I straight in. I can't do it. I can't talk fast.
You're not talking fast enough. Yeah. This whole thing is interesting to me. Have you guys heard the bit about the fact that they basically tested their missile testing site into oblivion, and that is likely the reason why this is going on? Apparently, what's been said is that the area where they've been testing their nukes is essentially crumbling in on itself, and this was inevitable. So essentially what Kim Jong-un is doing is, making this act to make it seem like he is virtuous and patient knowledgeable leader. When in reality he's just kind of using it as a PR opportunity, because regardless of any peace offerings, the nuclear testing program would have had to end anyway, seeing as how that their nuclear testing facilities are falling into a crater.
Yeah, because they're like 30 to 40 years old. So there's that. And they've been doing extensive nuclear testing and all that. So, yeah.
I would just like to remind everyone, so the threat from North Korea was never nukes. It's always they have a ton of artillery, and Seoul, South Korea is like the size of New York. And nobody wants that scenario to happen.
Right.
So
but nukes are the boogeyman.
Right. For people who don't understand the actual situation on the ground, the nuke is scary. But it's not what actual military and political leaders were afraid of. They didn't want to see 20 million people in Seoul, South Korea die from artillery bombardment, because that would have happened. We would have swept in. That war is over in 2 days, but you're not going to get those lives back.
True.
Right. Okay, that's fair. I think that's a good note to call it. Chris, why don't you now? Zach talked a little bit about mines and all that, why don't you tell us where you can find Think Liberty on these,
Okay, great.
on these outlets?
So Think Liberty is on Minds, but it's also on Steemit as well. And so we just started this up not too long ago, and you can find Think Liberty, just all one word, on Steemit. If you're on there, please make sure to look through our content. We'll post all our articles, and we're starting to post our interviews from the past from YouTube onto DTube, so that we can we can kind of get away from those platforms and move to something that emphasizes free speech and is also into cryptocurrency. And on minds.com, we are, let me see here, 1 second. My computer is not working very well. Okay, here we go. It's think_liberty on minds.com. So we post a lot of our memes there. So check us out.
I like it. Where can we find your stuff, Zach? Tell us again. Remind everybody how they can find your podcast and how they can find some more information about the Unconvention.
All right. So the Unconvention is omahaunconvention.com. Make sure you have your discount code. We are also on Facebook at the Omaha Roads to Freedom Unconvention. There's also a Facebook for the Roads to Freedom Foundation. We don't really use it yet. After the Unconvention, that will launch as a think tank kind of a thing for free market healthcare and education, and probably crypto. Those are our three big things.
Yeah.
The other, for the podcast, we are on Facebook at Roads to Liberty, not the number 2, the actual word to TO. Also YouTube, it is Roads to Liberty podcast. We're on DTube, but I gave up. I have trouble uploading to it. It frustrates the crap out of me. I'll get back there eventually. We're on Minds. It's actually at the Libertarian Party of Nebraska, because when I made the Minds account, we hadn't split off from the LPNE yet. And I'm trying to figure out how to get that to change without losing like the 140 subscribers I have, because I don't want to have to rebuild that. So, especially with the new algorithm, the way the new algorithm works is not favorable to what we do there. So,
oh God, it's brutal. It's brutal.
Yeah, no more hourly rewards. So you get if you're listening, go to Minds, like our podcast, like Think Liberty's podcast, interact with the articles, interact with the memes, like them, share them, comment on them. That is how Minds gives points so the content creator can boost.
Yes.
And that is so important, because we, like 18 of the 20 YouTube subscribers I have right now came off of Minds. And I'm running out of the ability to boost posts on Minds for
and the thing is, like,
it hurts.
I don't like the new algorithm, but if you are a quote unquote monetized account, you can actually work with this. But if you are not a popular monetized account, then it's kind of a struggle. So please comment on all our stuff. If you hate us, comment on all of our stuff. I'm not even kidding you. Like, just talk crap to us all day long.
Shit.
I do not care. I will go on there and I will talk crap back to you, or I will debate you. Like, that is the key to this platform, is engagement. So keep that in mind if you go on Minds. Keep that in mind if you go on Minds. So yeah, just try to engage people on Minds if you're on there as much as possible. Don't be a dormant account. So,
and that
all right,
that's on Facebook too. Like, Facebook works a little differently, but the algorithm rewards sites that are getting not just likes. Likes are okay, but comments are gold on Facebook. So,
oh yeah, man, we had a meme, an Alfie Evans meme,
exploded.
And it absolutely exploded. I mean, we had just an insane amount of reach compared to what we usually have. All just based on comments. The post itself didn't have an insane amount of shares. I mean, it had a lot of shares. It had like something that's getting close to 4 grand now. But there weren't a lot of like reactions. It's just tons and tons of conversation. People are still on that post talking about it right now, going back and forth passionately. And due to all the comments, it's got well over 500,000 reach.
And probably you've picked up likes off of that too, I assume.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I think you guys are growing a lot faster than we are. There's like you're set up a little bit, but we have just started shifting to doing some memes and doing things that aren't just our podcast. Because we were so closely tied to the LPNE for a long time that we had to be careful about what we did. But now, now I think we're in a much better place where we can start doing what you guys are doing. We're just, let's say you're at like 18,000, we're at like 500. So come like us, please.
Yeah, everyone go like them. Memes make the world go round. So if you're looking to follow Think Liberty, you can do it. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/thinkliberty.tl. You can go and find us on the web at think-liberty.com. You can find us on Twitter, which Lonie runs, at think_liberty. You can find me at thinkvinny. You can find Caitlin at anarcho_mom. You can find Chris at thinkChrisOG, and you can find Lonie, if I'm not mistaken, at Lonie_Dupree. That is LONI_DUPRE. I spell it because it's spelled a little different than you assume it would be.
LONIEDUPRE. Yes,
correct. Yes. You can find us on Instagram at Think Liberty, one word. Go join that. I run that, and I'm trying my best to get people to hop on and be a part of it. So we've covered the Steam It, we've covered the Minds, we've covered the Instagram, we've covered the Twitter, we've covered the Facebook. Is there anything that we may have missed?
If you go
YouTube.
to the Twitter, Think Liberty TV on YouTube. If you go to the Twitter, like you'll notice that it's a little different from like the Facebook and all that. Like that's all like very professional and organized and all kind of stuff. And the Twitter is just me and I ramble about stuff. And I've even posted a picture of like a can of dip that I bought one time. Like it's just all kinds of stuff. Like you never know what's going to pop up on the Think Liberty Twitter.
Because Twitter's a shit show and it should be treated as such.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's just... for a while, I was just kind of treating it as just like a personal account, just whatever, like all kinds of stuff.
Hey, so you guys should do me a favor because I'm having a bit of an internal battle here. Run a poll for me on some of your good pages and find out how many people have voted for a libertarian because they found the movement or the party on social media, because I think that's a very large number.
That could be a pretty good poll, actually.
I have been told by some people that it is not a large number. I would like to have, because like I've done some informal like talking to people, but I'd like to have something a little more concrete.
That's a good question. Zach, we were actually talking about this. What was it on Jared Hall's status the other day? I noticed you and I were both commenting on this, and it's something that
So it was my status and his comment on that.
Okay, yeah. And it's this super antiquated idea that I see people sharing all the time where they talk about like, oh, if you want to be about the liberty movement, if you want to be about something, get up off your ass and go do it. And it's like, look, I understand, in my opinion, it takes both. It takes activists online and it takes activists in person. You can't do it with just one either way. Right. You're not going to do it just online. You're not going to do it just in person. It needs all kinds of people doing all kinds of things in all kinds of different ways. But I do agree with you. And I know I agree with you because we were both on this side on that post, which is the whole idea that like the internet is fake and the internet is not reality is so antiquated and washed out. It's the most boneless take that exists. People are getting married, divorced, fired, hired, all kinds of things online. The
Getting
days of
elected
online
president.
isn't real life. You can put that in your pocket. Right. You can put that in your pocket and you can go fuck yourself.
Yeah, I mean,
because those days are long gone.
So, and it's like when I played WoW, there was 3 couples in the guild in the raid team that I was on, and yes, I'm that level of nerd. They got together on WoW, and one of them got married, and I think they're still married. I've met a couple long-term relationships on the internet. I played a game, so Clash of Clans. There used to be a game called Star Kingdoms that was kind of the text-based version of that from like the 1990s. That's how old this website was. And you would go on and build a kingdom, and it would reset every 2 months. The amount of couples that were formed out of that game, myself included, was astronomical. It might as well have been a dating service. So real life happens on the internet, and it's been happening for 17 years.
I met my wife in person, but our relationship started in like Facebook Messenger. You know, I mean, that's like I met her, but then, you know, we got to know each other and all that, like off of Facebook. You know, that's just something that happens.
Right. And I mean, even me and my fiance, like we've carried out a long distance relationship, and I don't think it would have been as fruitful without the internet. So people.
But yeah, it was almost impossible. Now it's like, I know a lot of guys that actually made it work in the military. So.
No, and you know, and to the point, you know, Jared's a great guy. He's a great activist. He's a great libertarian. I'm not trying to hate on him, but that's the thing that stuck into my mind because Zach, like you said, you and I were discussing it on that post. I've discussed it on other people's with other people as well, but I think it's important that people realize this kind of changing in the guard socially that it's real life now. Like we can stop talking about the internet as AOL chat rooms. That's over.
Yeah.
Everyone is on the internet. Everyone is using it. And the implications of the actions that people take on the internet are very much a part of real life now.
People lose their jobs because of Twitter posts.
Yeah, and they get elected to president because of it. I mean, it's all over the board. But one thing stands true, and that is that it does in fact matter.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I just want to say I thank everyone very much for their time this evening. Zach, you especially. I know you're on podcast number 3. You've been a great guest, and I
Thank you.
On behalf of everyone, I appreciate you taking the time to come and finish off your night here on the Think Liberty podcast.
Hey, anytime.
All right. Well, on behalf of Chris, Lonie, and Zach, we appreciate you listening, fellas. I appreciate your time, and whether or not anyone likes it, it's very likely that we'll be back again.